when I wake up in my own pink world.
Welcome to Everyday Theology, an ecumenical space for students to discuss matters of faith and theology.
I'm your host, Connor Grubbs.
I am your co-host, Ryan Mock.
And I'm your co-host, Johnny Grubbs. I have a feeling Connor was about to introduce himself as Ken.
And I'm just Ken. Anywhere outside be a 10.
Sorry. There you go. He had the enthusiasm.
Who's singing up there?
I'm Mac. I'm not Ryan Gosling, that's for sure.
And I'm great at doing stuff. That's my favorite line.
I love that.
I'm great at doing stuff. Okay, so listen, we disappeared for a very long time, and now we're back. Listen, this is season 6. We promised you we were going to go through the book of Revelation. We got to chapter 4, and now we're talking about the Barbie movie. So we are failures in every sense of the word. But listen, according to some evangelicals out there right now, Barbie is a sign of the end times. So,
oh, really?
no, so I mean, maybe that's exaggerating slightly, but I did want to share.
Is this this is a recent movie? So should we lead with this as a spoiler cast?
Yeah,
because I have lots of things to say about it.
Well, let's start with this. I'll warn you when we get into spoilers. But
okay.
a lot of evangelicals are saying that the Barbie movie is demonic. Do not go and see it. And so here's the thing: they're not just saying I didn't like it, or I felt like maybe it was a little bit woke, a little bit left-leaning, and I don't agree with that. They're literally saying it's demonic and that it will release demons into your home if you allow your children to watch this.
A little over-exaggerated.
I feel like you need to back that up with a lot of proof and like theological rigor before you make
to
that
demonstrate
claim.
that it's demonic.
Right? Yeah.
Man, I had the article saved, and now I'm having a hard time finding it, so nobody's going to believe me, but it's out there. So this guy it's Yvonne. Look, I'm going to find it. There's a preacher. He has a YouTube channel and a blog, and a lot of people follow him. And one of his here, hold on. I'm going to have to cut a bunch of this out.
There wasn't that much dead air.
Ivan Tuttle. He the founder of Ivan Tuttle Ministries.
Ivan Tuttle.
He's got a blog. He's got some YouTube stuff. And this is exactly what his recent Facebook post that blew up. A lot of people were talking about this said. It said, the Barbie movie is full of demonic influences. And do not be surprised if your child suddenly starts to behave differently after viewing it. And you said you need something to back this kind of claim up. Well, here's what Ivan has for us. The Lord showed me the millions of demons that will be released on your children. So
millions.
the Lord showed him. That's his backup.
What is your source?
The
Lord.
God. Don't take this lightly. They are coming for your children! ! So some people were like, yeah, you're right. It's demonic. We got to stop this Barbie demon stuff. Millions of demons, guys. This isn't... I don't know that I've ever heard an evangelical say that about a horror film.
Can I start with the fact that children shouldn't be watching this movie?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we can start there. It's not actually really geared towards kids.
It's not a children's movie.
It's for
people who used to play
So here's
with
my
Barbies
question.
when they
What
were
about
kids.
us? Like, are we immune to the demons? It's only if children watch it?
It's really, yeah. So, I don't know. But listen.
It's possible I'm possessed because I've been wearing a fur coat and I bought a mini fridge. And started the patriarchy in my home.
Does it involve a lot of horses?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of horses.
Listen, we can get into spoiler territory here, but yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, it's not for kids. And so there are a lot of people who are probably upset because they thought it was for children and they took their kids to see it, but it's rated PG-13. I feel like there was stuff in the trailers that sort of indicated this was more geared towards adults.
Yeah, and I don't give parents a pass. You got to do your research before you take your kids to the theater. There's plenty of great sources out there.
And when I heard that Greta Gerwig was going to be directing this, I mean, like, she's done a bunch of like really like deep Oscar, level like films, like dramas. So I wasn't really expecting it to be like a lighthearted, kids romp. They have plenty of animated Barbie movies for your children to watch, right? Like there's tons of those. This is not that. And I don't feel like they've tried to market it as that either. No. So here's sort of I'll kind of set the scene, and then we can share our thoughts because we've all seen it at this point. The premise is you have Barbie Land where all the toys are, and eventually some stuff starts going weird with Barbie, and all of the perfection of Barbie Land is sort of falling apart for her, and she's told that she can go into the real world to find basically like a person that's connected to the doll, right? And if she can figure out why this is happening, she's got to go into the real world to fix it. And so it's very meta. Like there's the Mattel toy factory, Will Ferrell's the CEO. The ghost of the woman who invented the Barbie toy is a character in it, and she's got an office in Mattel. Very weird storyline. And it's satire. Okay, so like right off the bat, this film is satire. It's very funny. Like it's actually like a very humorous comedy with some dramatic parts and some touching stuff in it, and a message. So a lot of people are probably going to be like, oh, this movie's too preachy for me. It is preachy, but like that's literally the whole point of the movie. What bothers me in a film that's preachy is when you're just trying to watch like Transformers or something, right? Like I just want to see robots punching each other in the face. And then you try to put like a political agenda in it, which they've never done. But if they did, I'd be like, that's not what I'm here for. But with this movie, literally the entire point is commentary on patriarchy and feminism and doing it in a very satirical and creative way. And so Barbie Land is sort of the opposite of our world. Instead of patriarchy being the law of the land, all of the women are in charge. They have awesome jobs and all this stuff. And the men, all of the kins, are sort of just accessories. They're just sort of there to be there and to look nice. And they don't have much of a purpose or a place in society. They're there to beach. That's their purpose in life. So, and then when Ken gets to go to the real world, he sees it flipped. And he's like, oh, this is what we should do. And so he goes back to Barbie Land and tries to, take over with patriarchy. And so, listen, like the word patriarchy is used a lot. This is very on the nose. It's in your face. It's not like trying to subtly preach the message. There's several monologues that honestly I think are well written and acted. I didn't find them to be cheesy, but there are several monologues about like the struggles that a woman goes through in society. And here we are, 4 straight white guys talking about, the Barbie movie.
We're the worst people to talk about this movie.
But I do think as a man, I would like to say to all the men who I'm seeing on the internet talking about this film, like, oh, it's anti-man. It's like this feminist propaganda that's anti-man. That's not the point in the movie. Like, I feel like you're just really defensive if you felt that way. Because ultimately, some of the messaging isn't totally clear, but I do think the overall point, right, is Barbie Land is the reverse of the patriarchy in the real world. And it's still not a good thing, right? Like the men are still overlooked, they're still left out. And here's where I felt like the messaging wasn't clear, is it doesn't show you what a world where both genders are cooperating and working together and like have equal share. It doesn't really show you what that looks like, but I feel like that was intentional on the part of the filmmakers. Okay, so now what are you going to do with this? But it does show you that patriarchy is bad, and to flip that, this radical form of feminism that just flips that on its head,
matriarchy,
that's not the answer either, which is a good message. That's true.
Yeah, well, and in that sense, I actually found the movie, I used this phrase earlier when I was talking to Ryan, and people would disagree with me, but I kind of felt like it was apolitical in that sense and just talking about real-world issues that people face. I mean, patriarchy doesn't have to be a political term. I mean, you're going to learn about it in medieval history class, right? Like, it's part of history, whether you like it or not. Now, the way you frame that may be political, but in my opinion, the way that they framed it in the movie was about real-life, real-world experience. And yeah, we use this word a lot. I felt like they dealt with it with nuance in a way that
you use that word a lot.
I use that word a lot. I felt like they did it with a lot of nuance to where if you're like a super hyper radical feminist, you're not going to be satisfied with it. And if you're like really super into the patriarchy, you're not going to be satisfied with it, because what it's trying to do it is find this place in the middle where like the way things aren't quite right, but the way things maybe are painted by radical feminism aren't quite right. And I think part of it was, okay, we're going to leave it to you. We're not going to show you what this looks like. But I also think it's because we don't have categories for a world where things are balanced either, right? I don't know how we depict that for real, because we don't know what that's like. We don't even have categories for that as a society. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. I was actually surprised because I was like, I feel like there's probably a lot of feminists who aren't satisfied with the conclusion of this movie.
I expected a more in-your-face, it's feminism as radical as it can be or nothing kind of approach, and it was totally not that, which was, so I don't know why. I expected that just because that's what they tell you Hollywood's doing right now.
And I actually, we kind of learned that throughout the movie that Ken is kind of the villain in the movie.
Right.
I mean, he ultimately he comes back around, but I actually thought that the movie was very empathetic to him. I see Ken as this 14-year-old boy who he's trying to figure out life, and like in this case, Ken establishes his identity in relation to Barbie. He's think it's Ken, it's Barbie and Ken, and so Ken has to have Barbie, and when he's not satisfied with that, like he turns to patriarchy to fill that void. And like so when I see that, like I totally think of like this 14-year-old boy who discovers like Andrew Tate on YouTube.
Yeah, and I actually love that you pointed that out, because as someone who works with youth, it's something that I see a lot where there are not a lot of young men who feel like they can step up to the plate and like lead and do things, because there is this sort of like, okay, you've had your time now, let women do their thing. And so there's lots of young girls who are stepping up to lead, and the different campus ministries and things I do, it's like almost all female led, and the guys are just apathetic. And that's what happens, is either they're kind of lost and they feel purposeless, or they find someone like Andrew Tate and they go full on like crazy patriarchy horses like Ken did. And neither one is a good answer. And I felt like that was kind of the story here. And so like it's really addressing something that's a very real problem that I get to see on a regular basis, that like, okay, maybe this response to like toxic masculinity and this really radical feminism is a push for basically matriarchy. Maybe that's a step too far, and that's actually having a negative effect on young men, and we need to find something that's more balanced.
Honestly, that feels like what the movie was trying to say, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's why I think, guys should watch the movie. It's not just for girls.
So just speak to that. And I know you guys have other thoughts. So there's a couple of things that I want to speak to. One's kind of out of left field, so I'll save it for my last of my two points. But one of the things that was really striking to me as a dad of a daughter is like, one of the things that Barbie was supposed to do is like, you could pretend to be all of these things, right? That women weren't at the time that Barbie came out, right? And you just this continual growth, but it was all pretend, right? And like that's a problem if in society that a woman being a pilot or a doctor and some of those things have come true, of course, but at first it was make believe, right? And so to get past that, I think that was a theme in the film as well, of getting past this stuff is make believe for women to this should be the reality for women.
Yeah, the line where she's like, we create things like patriarchy and Barbie to cope with how messed up the world is.
Right, exactly. Which hit that right in the nose. But now I'm going to hit you out of left field and talk about how Alan is the unsung hero of the entire film.
So, okay, and I did, this kind of ties into
I read an article about it too.
This ties into the other criticism I just want to address real quick that a lot of conservative Christians are coming at this with, is they're saying that it's the other reason it's promoting a woke ideology is because of the LGBTQ plus agenda in the film, which there was shockingly none.
Right.
I expected there to at least be a gay character or something. One of the Barbies, the Dr. Barbie, was played by a transgender woman. Her character is not that's not indicated in the film.
Right.
I didn't even know that till after watching the movie that this actress was transgender.
I just found out like 5 seconds ago.
So Ryan just found
had
out.
no idea.
In fact, I would go so far as to argue that the film makes it very clear that she's not transgender because there's a joke about the fact that they're literally dolls. They don't have private parts. So you couldn't even argue that, oh, this is the transgender Barbie. That's not a thing. All right? Yes, the actress who played this character was, but in the movie, that's not a part of the story. And then the other thing was there's lots of speculation and fan theories throughout Barbie lore that Alan is gay because Alan is Ken's best friend and he fits in all his clothes. That's like the tagline, and he says that at one part in the movie. It's kind of funny. And this has been like a long thing in Barbie lore that Alan is gay, and so everybody was expecting that to be a part of the movie. And there is not a single moment in the film that insinuates that Alan is gay.
Not only that, so I was like...
He's kind of the man's man of the movie.
And there's more to back that up because that's fan lore. The actual canon is completely different.
Yeah, he gets married. Well, that's the thing is they gave him a wife later because everyone was saying
Oh,
that.
okay.
They wanted to clear the air.
They wanted to clear the air. Well, they did clear the air because... So I was like... So Alan makes me laugh. Every time I saw... And I like Michael Cera. I think he's hilarious in everything he does.
And like in the first third of the movie, he doesn't even hardly say anything, but there'll just be shots where it just cuts to him standing there, and it's just hilarious.
There's an
It's just-
emotional moment where towards the end, and
Oh,
it just
yeah.
cuts to him, and he's just like crying. I'm just like, I can't help but laugh every time I
Yeah.
see the guy.
No, it's
So just for context, Alan is a Mattel character that was supposed to come along and be like a buddy to Ken. Like that's how it was advertised. This is Ken's buddy, and as a selling point too, if you had all of Ken's clothes, you didn't have to buy any more because Alan would fit into all of his clothes and stuff
Kinda
like that.
sus.
So that was their whole thing, and then people were like, "Oh, well, he must be gay because he's Alan's buddy, or whatever." So then, yes, they cleared the air about that, I guess. But basically, he gets married and he has 3 kids with Midge, which is the pregnant Barbie
that they discontinued.
that they discontinued. But Midge wasn't always pregnant, though. Midge started out as Alan's boyfriend that they created for him.
Alan's girlfriend, you mean?
Wait.
Midge.
Yeah, sorry, Alan's girlfriend.
Okay,
yeah, Midge. I'm sorry.
You were just
You ruined
proving
the
their
lore.
point.
No, it's not LGBT, I promise. No, so Alan gets a girlfriend, okay?
Yeah.
And
she's pregnant.
then the second iteration of Midge was the bride Midge because they get married, and then that's when they made the pregnant Midge. And then I think there's even a 4th iteration of Midge where there's multiple babies involved. But bottom line is...
So
line
Alan's very straight.
right,
in
right,
Barbie
not-
lore.
They really wanted to emphasize
They
that.
really
He
wanted
had
to emphasize
multiple
that.
children with his wife.
But what I like about it is, and this is what the Vulture article says about how Alan is the unsung hero of the film, is like he's just a solid partner to his wife. He just takes care of his kids. He's pretty ordinary, but like at least he's not Ken, the way Ken ends up being, right? Like you'd rather have somebody that's a good, just regular family guy than have somebody who thinks about horses all the time and can't put 2 thoughts together.
Yeah, he's just a regular dude, and he's not fazed by all the nonsense. And I also like the scene where he's like beating up all the bad guys in the background.
Right.
Like, but
Yeah.
it's focusing on the conversation that Barbie's happening. So it's like just in the background, and here he is. He's kind of a man's man too.
Oh,
like,
yeah, he goes to town.
Like all the Kens are like arguing and like wearing goofy outfits, and he's like beating everybody up. It was funny.
So anyway, I mean, and maybe I'm just, like seeing myself in film, of course. Like, yeah, just a dude who's like married and like is good to his kids. But like, I didn't know all that before watching the film, and then to read that after the film, after I already liked him so much and thought he was funny, I'm like, yeah, we want to be Alan, not Ken.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's true. And listen, it was a funny movie. I had a good time with it. And the fact is that Jesus and Paul also didn't like the patriarchy. If you read your Bible, they weren't huge fans of that system.
You just said that out loud on the air.
I thought you were about to say that they were Barbies.
No.
I was really.
I thought you were
No,
about to
I
say they
wouldn't say that.
weren't fans of the Barbie movie. But yeah, you're right. You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
it's in Scripture. It's pretty clear that like Jesus is an advocate for women in a system that oppresses them.
Yeah, Jesus is like an irrefutable case of that. Paul gets a little bit more complicated, but at the end of the day, it's also irrefutable. So.
For his time.
Yeah.
It's certainly
For his time,
Yeah.
To back that up further, I think the movie, I think this is very subtle in the movie, and maybe I'm just reading this into the movie, but I think there's an emphasis in the movie that the most important thing about us is not that we're woman or man, but it's that we're human and have
Yeah.
a human experience.
That's true,
And to
especially
bring that
towards the end.
bring that into a Christian framework, I think about Jesus. Some people like to emphasize how Jesus was a man, and that somehow justifies a certain kind of patriarchal view of the Scripture. But the truth is that the important thing about the incarnation was not that Jesus was a man, it was that Jesus was a human. And in the incarnation, we are saved through that incarnation. If the important thing about Jesus was that he was a man and not a human, then woman can't be saved. So it's not about man or woman, it's about humanity. It's about being human.
And that's further indicated by the fact that, St. Mary gave birth to Jesus and actually experienced pregnancy in order to bring him into this world, a very human thing. Like that's all part of the incarnation as well. And so you have both things at play to act like the incarnation is strictly male or female. It involved both.
Yeah, so that's, I guess the conclusion for me is, one, it's not for little kids. That's not what this movie's for. Two, it's surprising to me that people are like actually saying, oh, this is going to release millions of demons.
That's
when
really silly.
It literally wasn't even as feminist as I expected it to be, or in the way that I expected it to be, I guess, is a better way of putting that. And also, there wasn't even a single LGBTQ plus character in it, which there is in almost everything today, because it's really big on representation. And frankly, we've talked about this before, like when Lightyear came out. I don't think that's a reason to not watch a movie in and of itself. So I was expecting all of those things going into it, and they weren't even there. Like, it was less woke, for lack of a better term, than I was expecting it to be.
I went into
and
it.
so for all these people to be up in arms about it, I just don't get it. This is a swell movie. Mac, do you have any thing you'd like to add?
Well, I went to go see the movie as a part of the Barbenheimer experience because that was the meme, and I was more excited for the Oppenheimer part, which I overall think I liked Oppenheimer more, but I actually think that for not caring about it at all, Barbie was probably one of my favorite movies of this year so far. I kept hearing that it was going to be woke or in your face. I do think there were a couple of monologues that were a little on the nose, but I thought, like Connor said, they were well acted and written. And like my mom said, it really resonated with her, which I found very interesting. But it was a very solid movie. It was very funny, unlike a lot of comedies now, which are really just duds or just they think that like vulgarity makes it funny. This movie actually had like comedic timing. Remember when that was a thing? But one of the messages I took away, and Ryan kind of touched on this a little bit, was that Ken was trying to find his identity in Barbie, and I guess the concept is that Barbie finds her identity in Ken. Even at the end, Will Ferrell jokes, and he's like, well, Barbie gets Ken, the end. But to really find the identity in yourself, and I guess from a Christian perspective also to find that identity in the Lord, I think that was kind of the heart of the message, is finding your identity within yourself. And I thought that was like a bipartisan, like non either direction issue, but I guess we have to politicize everything.
Yeah,
now.
it's an apolitical issue, I think.
Right.
So one last thing I think is worth mentioning is on Reddit and Twitter, there were a bunch of women explaining their experience after watching the Barbie movie with their significant others that were male, and just kind of going over it and kind of waiting to see their reaction. And there are many whose boyfriends were deeply offended. And I've read some of these, posts or whatever, and it's interesting to me that the boyfriends, if the you're hearing one side of the story, but some of the lines that they say and some of the things that they say to disparage the film sound so much like Ken, right? It sounds so much like that toxic masculinity that's like sort of a shoot in the film. And so I don't know, that's kind of funny. You're seeing a lot of that on the internet right now, that like girls are breaking up with their boyfriends, and then I guess other boys might say, well, that proves that it's like ruining relationships and that it's I don't know, but I just thought it was interesting that was happening, but that a lot of the defense of this movie is really bad came across a little bit like I ride horses and I can do stuff.
Yeah, that proves the movie's point. There.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a female and you go see that movie with your boyfriend, and they come out defending Ken and seeing him as the hero, you probably should break up with them.
Find an Alan.
Yes, find an Alan.
There's Allens out there. Listen, it was fun. It was fine. What did you think? Are we demon possessed now because we watched this movie? Whatever. You can comment. You can like. You can subscribe, or you can not. It's your life. I don't really care.
We prefer that you do all the things you love.
Ryan prefers. I don't care.
Ryan Connor's indifferent now, so
Connor, yeah, he's
Go watch
apathetic.
Barbie or don't. I don't care. Goodbye.
And I'm just Ken.